Hi, I'm John Hopkins with Baltimore Heritage, and welcome to another one of our series in the Shadow of Industry, where we're exploring the industrial sites around the Baltimore Museum of Industry. And I'm joined by my colleague Curtis Durham, who will come up here in just a second. And today we're going to talk about general ship repair, and we've got a little bit of a treat, actually kind of a big treat, in that we've got a gentleman named Ryan Lynch, who is the fourth generation in the Lynch family to own and operate this. He's part of the fourth generation owners and operators, so we're going to hear from him as well. But let's start with general ship repair. It got its start in the 1920s, actually across the harbor, and has been in the Lynch family for 4 generations. They had a close call during the Depression where due to bankruptcy, it fell out of their family, but only briefly. It went up for public auction, and the high bidder at the auction was none other than members of the Lynch family. So they got their company back. Talk about tenacious. I guess maybe if most of your day is spent with a welding torch in your hand in cold, rainy winter weather, repairing the holes and bottoms of the ships, maybe tenacity is just part of your DNA. But General Ship has been repairing ships here in the harbor ever since. And in fact, they are the official ship repair for the Port of Baltimore, for their barges and their tugs. And I think that's a good place to start. Let's start with the Port of Baltimore. It was created in 1706, I believe that was the date, by an act of the Maryland General Assembly. And it was created specifically to haul tobacco, ship tobacco, out of the colony of Maryland. That was its express purpose. This was in a day, remember, we were still a colony, and the British controlled everything, including where tobacco could get shipped out of. It was doing well. Across the harbor, though, was a naturally deeper port called Fells Point. And Fells Point had been chugging away building and repairing ships and shipping in the shipping business since the 1680s. So it got a little bit of a start on that. But the Port of Baltimore did pretty well. It was aided by at least 3 different things. The first was dredging. As early as the 1780s, the port started dredging here in the harbor, and none other than the Ellicott brothers, if you know of Ellicott City, same family. They apparently were ingenious mill builders, but also ingenious dredge innovators, and with their dredges, the Ellicott Brothers Dredging Company, I believe, the port started deepening its channel. The second was lights, and the first lights to aid in navigation, of course, in the dark. The first lights were along North Point Ridge. That helped shipping tremendously. But then in the 1860s, along comes the Hawkins Point Lighthouse and other lighthouses out in the water that helped as well. And the third thing is in the 1840s, the port got a real boost with the B&O Railroad laying railroad tracks here to Locust Point. Originally called Whetstone Point. The first owner was a guy named James Carroll of the early Maryland family, the Carrolls, if you know them. He consolidated land and thought that the land here on what we call Locust Point today looked like a whetstone, the sharpening tool of the day. That's where it got its name. But in the 1840s, the B&O ran railroad tracks here, and we were able to ship things that were grown in the interior, grain and whatnot, in Indiana and Illinois and Ohio, come here by train and then out by ship, as well as get things in from all over the world and ship them all over the still relatively new United States. After the Civil War, that train track became important because it was not only goods coming in, it was people coming in. And Locust Point here became Whetstone Point. Locust Point became one of the largest points of entry, especially for European immigrants, second only to Ellis Island in many years. So we've got all sorts of stuff coming and going, and the question is, well, what stuff really came and went from the Port of Baltimore over the years? And the answer to that is really everything. When George Washington was president, in his first term, he made shipping with China, trade with China, a priority. China was second only to Great Britain as a trade partner. So coming in through the Port of Baltimore would have been tea, of course, as well as porcelain and silk and other things from the Orient. That was what was happening in the early days. By the, say, late 1800s, early 1900s, the famous clipper ship, Baltimore clipper ship that had been trafficking so many of those goods was on the decline. The steamer was on the way in, and especially especially after 1904 and the Panama Canal was built, it became advantageous to have big ships that could carry a lot, even if they were slower. So we started importing fruit, especially from the United Fruit Company, and especially bananas. Bananas were king. And in fact, bananas were so king that at one point when Baltimore was deciding on what to adopt as an official sort of symbol, we chose between the blue crab and the banana almost won. Can you imagine all of those yard signs and flags that instead of having a blue crab on them had the word Baltimore and then a big yellow banana? Whew, thankfully we did not do that. And then finally, by today, bananas are out, although we are still Dole Fruit calls us one of the biggest banana consuming cities in the country. Bananas are out and row is in. Roll on, roll off. The Port of Baltimore is one of the largest importers of automobiles in the country. And with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleague Curtis to talk a little bit about what's in the Baltimore Museum of Industry. All right, Curtis.
Thank you, Johns. And thank you again, PNC, for your generous sponsorship of this video series. If you like ships and shipbuildings, boy, do we have a collection for you. At our research center in our archives and library here at the BMI, we have a collection of ship plans spanning over 25,000 plans. These plans span probably 100 years, from the late 1890s through 1985. Some highlights include Liberty ships and my personal favorite, the conversion ships, wherein ships from World War II were converted into both commercial or private use. So hats off to the engineers for figuring that out.
Thanks, Curtis. I'm delighted to now turn it over to Ryan Lynch, who again is a member of the Lynch family, one of the fourth generation of Lynches that are currently owning and operating the ship repair company today. All right, Ryan, we're all yours.
All right, thanks, John. My name's Ryan Lynch. I'm fourth generation working here at General Ship Repair. My great-grandfather actually started the business in the Inner Harbor where the Hyatt is, as a little machine shop, working on little schooners coming in, wooden vessels back in the day. He later moved the business here to Key Highway and lost the business in the Great Depression, was able to buy it back, and we've been in the same location ever since. I've worked here with my two uncles who recently retired, and my father, and my brother works here as well. So it's been in the Lynch family for almost a century. We're doing mostly nowadays work on tugboats, barges, dinner cruise boats, small Coast Guard vessels, but also traveling to the port to do emergency repairs on bigger vessels and the Ready Reserve fleet. As you can see behind me, we have two floating dry docks to float the vessels and do underwater repairs. We're actually getting ready to undock this vessel here, Coast Guard cutter Chalk.
And I'm going to wind this up by saying thank you again to General Ship for letting us film on their yard. We're on location here. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.